What's more, if Britain votes to stay, what compels the EU to keep their promises? The deed is done. We're in, one way or another. This eventuality could in fact have the opposite effect that Mr. Cameron intends. It could have the effect of spurring on arch-federalists like Angela Merkel, who long for full European political integration under the knowledge that the threat of a British exit has been removed from the picture.
I think that if you look to the world of today, if you look to the empires that are India and China and the United States and at the same time Russia, I think that the time is very near that we're going to decide on a European army in the European Union.
I will create a grand army of the Republic to counter the increasing threats of the separatists.
The Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire for a safe and secure society.
We voted in that referendum after a lengthy campaign where all the issues were thoroughly debated from every angle and point of view, so that when the time came, everyone who was paying attention knew exactly what they were voting for and, just as importantly, what they were voting against.
If we vote to leave Europe, there is no going back to a system that won't let us vote. Actually won't let us vote on the laws they enforce on us. They let us have lip service representatives with ceremonial veto power, but no vote. As I understand it, we, the British people, are voting on whether or not we should be able to vote. And I don't really understand politics, but I do know when we've hit the bedrock of philosophical hypocrisy. If you want to vote, you should vote for the I Want to Vote party. If you don't want a vote, then don't vote. If you favour the I Don't Want to Vote party, then surely you should stay home on June the 23rd. Keep doing what they're doing and await the day the dictatorship steamrolls over you like you apparently wanted to.
One big issue that arguably overshadows and informs every other. Before we get there though, it's worth dispelling a tired old myth that I encounter all the time, and is probably bouncing around the head of any Europhile listening. An accusation that is constantly hurled at people like me who have come to the decision that I have. The accusation that I somehow hate Europe, that I'm a little Englander who's just intimidated by weird accents, Italian cologne and German sausage. And it's a ludicrous argument. I run a European business. I speak French. I've lived and worked in Switzerland, Belgium, Holland and the Ukraine. I have friends all over the continent. I love Europe. In fact, I'm so pro-Europe that I'm anti-European Union. Britain and every other country entangled in this political spider's web of undemocratic bureaucracy would be better off out of it. The key issue for me is that of sovereignty. The EU nation states have already lost vast chunks of it, and we're losing more and more every day. So just how much of British legislation is derived from the EU? The true figure is difficult to calculate. A Eurosceptic campaign group, Business for Britain, put the number at roughly 65%. Some estimates are slightly higher, some are slightly lower, but regardless of the exact amount, it's a lot. The present Secretary of State for Justice, Michael Gove, who is a staunch advocate for a British exit, had the following to say on the topic. As a minister, I've seen hundreds of new EU rules cross my desk, none of which were requested by the UK Parliament, none of which I or any other British politician could alter in any way, and none of which made us freer, richer or fairer. That's bad enough, but when you learn about the system that is in place to propose and enforce European legislation, the picture becomes blacker still. Every single directive that comes from the EU is proposed by the unelected European Commission. These are appointed bureaucrats whose name never appears on a single ballot paper. They have the sole right to make law and the sole right to repeal law, and there is nothing we can do in elections, national or European, to change a single European law. We have essentially renounced our democracy. We have lost our sovereignty. And regardless of any opinion you may have pertaining to the advantages or disadvantages of remaining in the EU, that point is indisputable. It is unarguable.
If we can't bring ourselves to say what's in our hearts when it truly matters, then we've already given up our freedom, and with it the freedom of future generations, which is something that we've got no right to do. We didn't earn this freedom. It was handed to us on a plate by people who did earn it with their lives. We don't own it. We're custodians of it. It's not ours to give away.
Why do I come here and tell you these things as an Englishman? Why do I come here and hymn the praises of a republic that was, after all, born out of a popular revolt against the British Crown? Well, I'll tell you. I think we are heirs to a common heritage and a common tradition. And this was something that was very much in the minds of your patriot leaders at the time of the division. They didn't believe that they were dreaming up a set of arbitrary and abstract freedoms from scratch. They saw themselves as part of a tradition that stretched back deep into our past, back through the Glorious Revolution, back through the English Civil War, back even before the Magna Carta, to that folk right of Anglo-Saxon common law. This extraordinary idea that law does not emanate from the government, but that rather the government is subject to a law that comes from the people. That the state is not the source of authority, but that the people are sovereign. That is my country's greatest export, our supreme contribution to the happiness of mankind. The glorious idea that laws ought not to be passed, nor taxes raised, except by elected representatives. And that vision found its purest and most sublime expression in the old courthouse in Philadelphia. Now, I've seen in the country where this vision was first adumbrated, I've seen what happens when it's put into retreat. As power has passed in my country from Parliament to the standing bureaucracy, and as sovereignty has passed from the British people to the European Union, I've seen what happens when you lose those freedoms. I'm terrified to think that it might be happening here, in the one place I'd always looked to be the secure vessel of liberty. I mentioned that I came here from Northern California yesterday, like some of the people in the audience. And there, an irresistible metaphor struck me. There I was, where most of the wine in the United States is grown. Of course, those vineyards came from European stock. Originally, they had been the various varieties of grape had been introduced from French and Italian and Spanish vineyards. Towards the end of the 19th century, there was a plague in Europe, a blight called phylloxera. The vineyards were wiped out. And in order to resuscitate European viticulture, in order to bring back new cuttings, the wine growers of Europe had to come to California and bring back the cousins of the grapes whose ancestral stock had been wiped out in Europe. Now, I see something similar. I used to dream of a similar thing happening in politics. What I've stood for since I became an elected representative in Britain has been a restoration of our traditional British freedoms. Devolution of power, direct election of public officials, localism, devolution of power, all of the things that you take for granted here, all of those wonderful ideas that we exported and that we've now lost in the mother country. Imagine how they would have felt, those European wine growers, if when they finally got to California, they discovered that the aphids had got there first, and that the eggs were on the leaf, and that there were no vines to take home with them. That's my fear when I see you going down this road, when I see this administration repeating all the mistakes that we've made on our side of the Atlantic. I don't say that you've got everything right in this country. I don't say that the US is perfect. I don't say that we've got everything wrong in Britain. But it is bizarre that the bits of the European system you are intent on copying are the bits that have most spectacularly and obviously failed. You deserve better, my friends. You deserve better, and we expect better. Let me finish by making a plea to you, and I make it as your kinsman, and as your friend, and as your ally, but also as a common inheritor of that shared patrimony of the English-speaking peoples. Don't repeat our mistake. Cleave fast to the vision of your founders. Treasure the inheritance you have from your parents and pass it on intact to your children.